KC Joyner, ESPN.com NFL Insider, is here to break down all the matchups to watch in this one. We got the injury report, Casey, clean bill of health for both teams. So we have a fair game pretty much on both sides. Yes, we know the Eagles are missing a lot of guys throughout the course of their season, but all of the guys that are available are healthy and ready to go. So let's dive into this one. Let's start with the Eagles defense, because most people, Casey, believe if the Eagles are going to win this game, it's going to be because of the guys on their front four up front here. So the Eagles defensive line against the New England offensive front. How do you like that matchup?
I like the matchup a lot for the Eagles because they're ranked first in the league in a metric I have called good blocking rate. It measures how often an offense gives the defense quality run, offense gives the ball carries quality run blocking. It's important because good blocking carries are 4 to 5 times more productive than bad blocking carries. So Philadelphia's defense is not a defense you're going to be able to run consistently against. The problem there is Belichick has shown in the past when he faces defenses that stuff to run really well, he'll just decide I'm going to do a game plan that has 0 runs. So I don't think he's going to quite go to that extent, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them say we're going to throw the ball 40 times and only run the ball 10 times, something, that kind of ratio, and just say I'm avoiding that matchup altogether because I think New England at best can get a push in that matchup.
Is there a spot? The Eagles' defensive line is very talented. They got a lot of guys. But if there's one matchup on the offensive line that you think can be exploited, I think the last few weeks we talked about in Atlanta, the backup guard there. Same thing in Minnesota. They had some shuffle their line around. Is there a weak spot that one of these Eagles' defensive linemen can exploit?
Again, against the rush, I think they get. We're going to finish 5th in that good blocking rate metric on offense, so 48.5%. So they've got a good run blocking line. So I don't look at it from that perspective. I think what the Eagles need to concentrate on in this matchup is if New England does run the football, I think New England's going to run the football in situations that are a game situation favorable to them. So they might run draws on 3rd and 10 or something of that nature. They might run plays of that nature. And the Eagles front seven is really good at winning blocking battles, but they're not very good at stopping of all carriers when they do allow good blocking. They were next to last in the league in good blocking yards per attempt. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm not necessarily, the Patriots offensive line is so consistent, I'm not necessarily looking to say I'm going to beat one particular matchup, but I want to make sure that if they do get good blocking, that you've got linebackers shedding blocks, you've got safeties come up to making good plays in the running game, because that's the one thing New England's going to want to do is make them fear the running game just enough to make sure the safeties have to think about it so they can go after the safeties in other ways.
Casey, you just mentioned before about the propensity of Bill Belichick and the Patriots just to get away from the run altogether, just saying, you know what? Today's not the day. We're not running it. Is that a situation that Philadelphia should welcome?
I would think Philadelphia should, and I'll tell you what, if New England does that, Philadelphia should only welcome it if they say, fine, we'll let Nick Foles get into a shootout game with you, because otherwise it's going to be, if you remember Super Bowl 25, the Bills had that real high-powered offense, and they tried to make it into a fast-scoring game, and the Giants just tried to slow the thing down a lot. Well, the Giants won that Super Bowl, but they barely won it. And if I'm Philadelphia, I'm looking at saying, I don't know that I can slow this game down enough, or I don't know if Philadelphia wants to play that type of game to say, we're going to try and slow the game down while you try and speed the thing up. If I'm Philadelphia, I just go ahead and run what my game plan is, but I expect New England to go ahead and throw the football a lot, and I'm trying to throw in mixers, I'm trying to throw in things of that nature, and hoping I can create some fumbles or something of that nature, because Brady almost never throws interceptions. So you're going to have to do other things to slow their offense down. But if I'm them, I'm expecting a game plan, a pass-heavy game plan, and I might even throw in some blitzes to try and screw Brady up, because they're not usually going to expect that from Philadelphia.
KC Joyner, ESPN.com, breaking down the matchups to watch. All right, you've got Hogan, Amendola, Brandon Cooks, Philip Dorsett, Gronkowski as your receiving core against the Eagles secondary that has been surprisingly good this year. Darby, Patrick Robinson, Jalen Mills, Malcolm Jenkins, and Rodney McLeod. So in the passing game on the outsides, break down that matchup.
Kind of concerned because New England has 4 players who ran 100 or more routes this year that are vertical routes, meaning they went 11 or more yards downfield. And that's Cooks, Gronkowski, Amendola, and Hogan. And Hogan did it despite only playing in 9 games. So if you prorate Hogan's route numbers over the 9 games, he might have actually been the most vertically inclined receiver on a per-game basis. So they've got 4 guys who are really, really good at that. The thing is, though, is that Amendola only caught 18 vertical passes this year. Hogan caught 12 in 9 games. So those two guys, you know, and they are only going to catch 1 per game. I wouldn't be looking at those guys to be the vertical threats. Cooks and Gronkowski split. They have 30 and 31 vertical receptions between them. So they're, you know, they get a couple per game and such. So it's like New England's going to throw the ball to whoever they think is going to be open downfield. They're not necessarily going to say our vertical game is going to go through one receiver like a lot of teams do. So if you're Philadelphia, you just want to make sure that you play your coverages the right way, because you know New England is not just one guy you can say, we take that guy out of the matchup, we shut the vertical game down.
Yeah, and then you have the whole Gronkowski situation. You know, he's a nightmare for everybody. You got Jenkins, you've got the linebackers, Bradham, Kendricks. You know, we talked a little bit yesterday about Rasul Douglas, who's a bigger corner. If you're Philly, who gets the assignment of Gronk?
The biggest guy. I might go Rasul. I might, you know, take the biggest player and say, because I think he doesn't do it quite as well versus size, but I want big and fast too, because when he goes up against cornerbacks is when he tends to have the most struggles. But again, if you take a cornerback away from him and receivers and go to him, they'll just go into a different you know, go into a different person. So with him, I just want to make sure that if I'm running combinations on him, if I'm running double teams on him, I'm going high-low combinations. I'm trying to take away those. I want to make him go inside and out. I want to make sure that he's running out patterns and dig patterns, and I don't want him running seam patterns or corners or posts. I want to make sure that I'm taking that part away, or at least if he's going to throw downfield, he's going to be throwing into coverage. By the way, though, I will say this, on a targets per route basis, in other words, when you're running a vertical route, how often are you targeted? Gronk is targeted on 36% of his routes downfield. It's easily the highest number among the Patriots. So when he does go vertical, that he tends to be routed, you know, targeted just over a third of the time. So that's something I'm saying to him, is I want to make sure that he's sending certain vertical routes and taking those away.
We're talking with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. All right, let's look at the other side of the coin here, and you've got the Patriots defense. We've kind of tried to find all week, Casey, who is the X factor in terms of the pass rusher, and could that potentially be James Harrison? We talked to one of the Patriot beat guys earlier this week. He thinks they're going to play Harrison 30 to 40 snaps, and as we've looked around this defense trying to find a guy who is that pass rusher to be worried about, maybe that is the X factor, that Harrison matched up with Vitae could be a problem.
Yeah, it's funny that, you know, that the guy who hasn't been on their team, when you look at his production during the postseason, I would think that he would be the guy they would go to and say, okay, this is somebody that we're going to be that's going to be our big pass rusher, because the players in general. There's a metric they have called disrupted dropback percentage, which is the percentage of plays that you disrupt the dropback. ESPN stats information tracks it. Harrison actually has the best has the best numbers in that metric among New England players. And if you got to get, like, if you're over 2% in that metric, you're doing really well. If you're 3, you're elite. The Patriots only have one defensive lineman who's in the 2% range. They don't have anybody who does well in that metric. So Harrison probably is their best rusher, and I would not be shocked to see 30 or 40 rushes at him, and that would be the person I'd be worried most about from Philadelphia.
All right, what about that Eagles offensive line, which is graded out by you pretty well all season long? Is there a threat from the Patriots, front four rush? You know, they changed their looks up a lot here. So the pass rush of the Patriots, which I guess on the surface just doesn't seem like they have that guy, as we just kind of talked about. But how do you like the Eagles offensive line against their pass rush?
I'm looking for if the Patriots are going to get Patriots, by the way, from weeks 11 through 17 this season, they ranked 5th in pass pressure rate. So they're scheming pass pressure as much as they're just getting it out of players. That's another thing to be concerned about. I'm worried about the tackle position. I'm worried about the Eagles being able to block on the edge. But what I'm most worried about, and that's why the whole thing of Brady and passing, the biggest thing I'm worried about if I'm the Eagles is they've only had Nick Foles throw 8 vertical passes per game in the Atlanta and the Minnesota game, in those 2 playoff games. 8 is not a big number in vertical passing. It means you're only throwing downfield every so often, and a number of those passes were stretch vertical passes. So it's either dink and dunk throws, or he's throwing 20 or more yards downfield. He's throwing go routes. He's throwing, a lot of seam routes, things of that nature. And I think the Patriots say, okay, Foles, we want you to throw more of them. We're actually going to invite you to do that because we think you might make mistakes if you're doing a lot of downfield throws. So I think if I'm Philadelphia, I'm trying to still do more dink and dunk throws because he's got the best, Foles has the best adjusted completion percentage among quarterbacks in the playoffs. So if I'm Philadelphia, I want to make sure that whatever I do, I'm still just doing a lot of dink and dunk throws, and I'm running the ball a lot, and maybe keep a fast-paced offense and planning on having to score over 30 points to win the game. But I don't want to go vertical because I'm just fearing Harrison. I'm fearing the idea of I don't trust my left tackle, and I'm fearing that their pass pressure rate of late has been so good.
You also look at the Eagles' secondary, and underrated all season long. They kind of came out of nowhere to have a strong season. They got a lot of depth back there. You match them up against this passing offense, but there's a lot of different ways the passing offense of this Patriots team can go up against that secondary with the running backs out of the backfield. We talked about Gronk, Hogan, and that group there, but the Eagles' secondary, is that something that you think Belichick and McDaniel are figuring out a way to go after?
Yeah, if I'm them, I'm very scared of the idea of Brandon Cooks going up against, say, Jalen Mills. I know Mills has done well, but Cooks leads the team in vertical receiving yards. He is their best vertical threat. I mean, Gronk is right behind him, but I mean, Cooks is the downfield receiver. So if I'm them, I'm worried about that sort of matchup. I'm worried about if they get Hogan, because Hogan was like I mentioned, he had some good numbers this year on a limited number of targets and things. But last year, in 2016, he had some fantastic vertical and stretch vertical yards per attempt total. So I'm really concerned about what he can do to the defense. And if I'm Philadelphia, I'm very worried about making sure my safeties stay in position, because they have a tendency to get over aggressive, and Brady's very good at that. And I really want, if I'm the Eagles, I want to play a disciplined defense. I want to make sure that I'm not getting out of position, because if they get out of position, hey, again, the Patriots have 4 receivers who can be vertical threats, and they've got the short pass receivers to do things with too. But if I'm them, I'm worried more about the vertical threats and saying I want Brady to still have to go 12 plays downfield, because I think he can do it. But if I'm them, I make him do it.
All right, KC, you look at the matchup here. What is the weakness that New England is ultimately salivating about on either side of the ball? What is the big Eagles weakness that you think the matchup is clearly in New England's favor?
Special teams. Special teams right now it's been a problem for the Eagles during the playoffs. During the season, the ESPN and Stats Information has this measure called Special Teams Expected Points Added. It measures special teams production on what they estimate is going to be a point per game basis. And New England was second in league in special teams expected points added this year, and they averaged about 2.5 points per game. The Eagles were 8th in special teams expected points added, and they got about just over a point per game. But during the playoffs, the Patriots are I think they've got a point in the 2 games, and they're doing a solid job, but not a great job. But the Eagles have almost -7 points in special teams expected points added during the playoffs. So that's the thing they can give the Patriots a 3-point advantage if things play out as they have all season. It could be at least that. But if things don't go well for Philadelphia and they still play badly, and New England gets back to its normal performance in that area, that could be a 6-point advantage. So if I'm Philadelphia, they've had solid special teams all year, but they need to make sure they have solid special teams, because if they lose that battle, they're not winning the game.
And they've made a couple of mistakes in these playoffs with special teams, a couple muff punts. That certainly something that could really bite them in this particular game against this particular team. Flip it around. Where's the area this week that Doug Peterson and his staff are saying, this is where we have the clear advantage. We got to take advantage of this?
We have seen Philadelphia do a lot of creative things in the passing game. I want to see what kind of a run play call that Doug Peterson could be. Yeah, I know he's going to do a lot of screen passes and things, but if I'm him, I'm going, I want to do traps. I want to do stretches. I want to do sweeps. I want to do counter plays. I want to do isolation plays. I want to mix in counter plays in a way that the defense throws the defense off. I want to do everything I can to mix that defense up and to make them worry about everything in the running game, because you're already going to win the head-to-head battle in the running game. The Philadelphia offense is great at run blocking, and New England's defense finished 30th in good blocking rate allowed. So that's a team you can run against a lot. In fact, they allowed more games of 100 more yards rushing than all but 6 teams this season. So you can pound the ball against those guys, and I want to make sure that they're having to spend their creativity thinking about all the different things I'm going to do in the running game, not just win the head-to-head battle, make them think about schematically too, because if Philadelphia can do that well, they can rush for 150 and win.
All right, ultimately, you got 1 game left to break down. You've probably seen every angle and every situation with these 2 teams to get ready for the matchup. So, break down this matchup. Who do you like, and ultimately why?
I used the old Bill Parcells tack on these sorts of things. He used to say that if a team's played 10 games, how many times did my team win? But before the playoffs, I wrote something for ESPN's Super Bowl preview issue. I wrote a preview, and we had to write that before the championship games. We had to advance it just because of the turnaround time for when the magazine was going to hit. And at that time, I would have thought, well, if these 2 teams play the way Philadelphia looked in the divisional round, they would probably only win 2 out of 10. I think that's increased a lot, and I think that's why the point spread has been dropping in Vegas, because people are realizing Philadelphia's got a much better chance to win this game the way they looked in the conference championship game. But when I play out the what would have to happen to win, I'm still getting New England 6 out of 10 times they're going to win the game. So I think New England's going to win this game. It's probably going to be by a touchdown. I do want to throw in one caveat. I've picked the Eagles twice in Super Bowls before. You know, the 2 Super Bowls they played in, I picked them to win and lost both times. So I'm picking New England to win. That might actually be a good thing for the Eagles.
All right, you can hear the game right here Sunday night on 97.3 ESPN. KC Joyner, of course, with all the football all season long. We'll recap the game on Monday night and find out what happened, why they won, or why they lost Monday at 5 on the Sports Bash. All right, man, enjoy the game.
You too, man. Appreciate it.